Hopefully it'll stop. Otherwise it's staggered for me. Okay, this evening there was something that I I've been looking at the this Cuomo report, which is the internal one that made the accusations. Hold on, I want to scroll up because then I'll miss my place. But there was something I already mentioned, the Mean Girls, but then this was from Caitlin. Instructed her to act like a sponge, to soak up knowledge, then proceed to call her by the name Sponge, which she found to be embarrassing, condescending, and demeanoring. I mean, I already mentioned the movie Charlie Harper Wars. This is up on Capitol Hill. He calls his assistants jailbait. As I say, at least he calls a spade a spade. I mean, where's everybody's sense of humor? I mean, for the jailbait. I mean, and the Sponge one, I want to play. Oh, this is my favorite, or one of my favorite movies. And this is Auntie Mame. I'm gonna get this. Hopefully it won't block me with this, because I didn't used to have problems with it blocking on copyright, since my channels are not monetized. But I don't know, lately I'm like, I'm not making money off this. It's just my activism. Anyway, let me play you this.
No, Patrick. The bubbles no longer tickle my nose. I've given up alcohol, along with everything else. It's one little view, all very touching, but what's that?
It's your dictaphone and your typewriter.
And what's that?
I'm your sponge.
Annie Mae, this is your second.
See, Governor Cuomo did not invent the whole sponge idea for the assistants. This is another thing. As I say, it's because it's this eccentric aunt. This is, during the crash, and it goes into the Depression, but this eccentric aunt, very East Coast, upper crust, and her brother passes away, and I guess the wife as well. So she ends up with custody of the son. However, the father is concerned about the eccentric aunt and some of her ideas. So there's a trustee from the Knickerbocker Bank who's always has the eagle eye. It's a wonderful movie, but this is one of the messages that I love from this one.
I think I know what you want me to do. I'm not a bit sure I want to do it.
I just swear it is your spine. Here you've been taking my dictation for weeks and you don't get the message of my book. Live, that's the message.
Live?
Yes, life is a banquet and most poor suckers are starving to death. Now, come on, Agnes, live. Come, child, live.
So anyway, well, Agnes's living doesn't work out. Well, it works out in the end, but it's a little bumpy ride. But anyway, it's a classic. It's a wonderful movie. Oh gosh, sorry, it's getting hot in here. And the version with Rosalind Russell, which is this one, is much better than the one. There was one done with Lucille Ball, but I agree with the critics. But I mean, you know, when I read that, I immediately thought of that movie, and I was like, what's wrong with me calling a sponge? I think I'd rather be called a sponge than jailbait. And quite frankly, what I've always told young kids, you know, anytime coming into any job, I'm like, look, learn as much as you can. You always have something to learn from a job. So learn, and quite frankly, if I was the you know, assistant, an executive assistant, right-hand person of a governor of a state, I would be a sponge. Like, what was it, you know, anything and everything I could learn from them. I mean, you women, you think you're so professional. Well, that's really what grappling up the ladder of success means. That you take the time, instead of just brown nosing and getting into these little cliques that are pulling these type of games, because I won't, you know, if I was to go through point by point for that, from that report, we'd be here for 5 hours. But it really, it's just another example of how HR in collusion, again, I said, I want to find out who did the investigation and the report, because all of these ethics people, you know, ombudsmen, they just add another layer to the cesspool. They all need to be investigated. Bullying is rampant. Labor rights are rampant. And when there are serious allegations, they sweep it under the carpet. That came out also with the IMF. I mean, I did a whole report and everything was swept under the carpet. Can't find a lawyer to take them to court. But it was, I always forget if it's Naji Piroska or Piroska Naji. She was an economist at the IMF with Dominique Strauss-Kahn. Now, when he got arrested in 2011, which was a coup from Sarkozy, I mean, DSK's zipper problems are well known, and that his now ex-wife would only refer to them as Bérimère. I mean, this is supposed to be one of the top journalists in France. Yeah, Anne Sinclair, we're gonna have a lot of discussions, you and I, not only with the IMF Family Association, but Huffington Post, France. But so anyway, Piroska Naji, she filed a complaint for sexual harassment and a forced affair with DSK 3 years before the 2011, you know, when he was arrested. And of course, then it came out. Didn't come out before. She had a lawyer that wrote a letter to management at IMF, but it was swept under the carpet. Of course, I've written my own letters, but no lawyer is going to defend me. Are you kidding? Don't want to shut me up. So, you know, these problems are rampant, but you know, they just added up. Ombudsman, ethics. I mean, how many of these bullshit artists, and these people earn with salaries. I mean, I'll see if it's 5 or 6. I would put it more in the 6. Or at least high 5. For what? To con the taxpayers, to cover up for the con job of the taxpayers. I mean, Bretton Woods and the international human rights community, development community, human rights, whatever you want to call it, was started after World War II to try and prevent the exact problems that we're seeing right now. But all of the employees, they're just ka-ching, 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 ka-ching. They don't care as long as they can cash in. So, because I'm working on some other cards that get into other issues. Even though I have quite a few, there's still other stuff. There was, this kind of highlights exactly where the feminists want to take us. There's a movie with Jennifer Garner. It's called Peppermint. It's a good movie, and her martial arts in that. Oh, lady, could you teach me to do some? The kickboxing, but like the stuff that she does, I'm like, whoa. Let's just say my talent, or maybe I'm too old to do some of that stuff, but you like martial arts, it's pretty funky. And it's a good movie. It's entertaining. However, it's what they call parental revenge action flick. So what happens is her husband and son are murdered by some cartel people, and the judge, the courts lets them off. The cartel, I guess there's several people, but lets them off. So she goes and trains and becomes this martial art person and learns how to kill, and then seeks her revenge against the judge and I don't know, I forget if it's judge or just the cartel, but I think it's everybody. And yeah, when I'm watching that, I'm like, oh, I really like the martial arts, and it is, well written and well acted. But this is exactly my point. I'm taking the other road. I'm pissed off. Okay, it wasn't, cartel. Cult, protection racket, I guess they're all the same. But I wouldn't go down that road. But that's where the message for the feminist is. Demi Moore was in a movie about the army and her going into the army and showing she could be just as physically tough and performant as men. I'm not gonna put myself in competition. I did bodybuilding for a little while, but no, I'm strong for, right now I'm overweight, but I'm strong for how skinny I am, but no, I'll compete with men when it comes to my brain, but not brawn. Come on, women, let's face it, that's why we developed the psychological manipulations because we are not as physically, sure, there are guys out there that I could probably beat, but they're scrawny little kids or scrawny little men. This was my thing with my ex. I'm like, excuse me, you guys, I'm not a timid little idiot, but you put me up against a man twice my weight. It's not a fair fight. I'm sorry. Now, if you put me, even if you put me up against a man in a physical fight, it's my weight, it's still not totally a fair fight. So, like, I don't even want to go down that road. I don't. And I don't know why any woman would. So that gets into also, that goes on to a theme that I've been talking about, that I don't understand how making women as physically violent and murderous as men is a progress. I'd like to see men become less violent and women become less of a bitch and less manipulative. Get a life, ladies. I mean, I know we've all been brought up to be bimbos. Believe me, learn your lines and move as expected. Ugh. When I heard that Barbara Streisand song, I was like, you want to come on over to my house? Meet my mom. That's what it's all about. Yes. Obviously, it didn't work out. Yeah, it just produced somebody who knows how to say, oh, F you. But it does destroy a lot of people. I mean, that's the problem with the old paradigm of spare the rod, spoil the child. It doesn't produce a healthy society. Oh, okay, here we got some that fell out. Let's see. Ooh, they're all presidential. Is that on all of them? My goodness. Well, let's see if got a feminist there. I don't have. Yeah, they all came out presidential. Okay, one. Well, those are two. Then I'll just put from, well, this is a feminist and this is a Joe Biden. I want to do two. I hope everybody's having a good holiday. I hate to say this. It's Labor Day, right? See, the thing is, in Europe, Labor Day is, or everywhere else in the world, Labor Day is May 1st. The Americans are the only ones who put it in September. And believe it or not, May 1st is my birthday. They were doing something, I think, when they let's see. Oh, here I am. Okay. Oh, I guess I gotta read them first. But see, this is how long I was out of the United States. I mean, like Mother and Father's Day, forget it, I don't know. Because it changes from every country to another. When you're expecting, you're like, okay, well, when are we supposed to celebrate it? Okay. First one, we have JFK, Thomas Jefferson. Second pile, Gerald Ford. I was talking about the ombudsman and all of those people. Oh, I already talked about a lot of this, but I can talk about the ombudsman. Well, you can't really see anything there with that one. Richard Nixon. Oh my goodness, my goodness, my goodness. Okay, well, this is about the domestic violence extremist report by Biden, which is March 2021. So it's some people in that one. Okay, so I think I want to start with JFK. Excuse me. Okay. Sorry. Okay, JFK, as everybody knows, was assassinated. I don't think that's a newsflash. Now I would have been just maybe 6 months old. So of course I don't really, I don't remember anything of that. Except, the footage afterwards. However, I definitely believe that the assassination of JFK and Bobby Kennedy and Martin Luther King were all an inside job. This was part of the as I say, are these the Koch brothers totally behind this, or did they hook up with the Fourth Reichers, which from descendants of the Third Reichers, of course, because now we're getting into another generation. That's speculation, like exactly which factions and who were involved. Of course, it's said that the CIA was somehow involved, which I wouldn't surprise people all, knowing the CIA. So, I know it's conspiracy theorists. Everybody just sweeps everything under the carpet as, oh, that's just a conspiracy theorist. Well, yeah, so investigate it. It's a theory, it's a hypothesis, but you can't just discount it unless you investigate whether it's true or untrue. That's the job. It's the job of everybody, but particularly within the judicial branch. They're the prosecutors, and if they drop the ball, then it's the executive and the legislative branch. They're supposed to pick up the ball. But of course, they're all out to lunch. They're all buddy-buddy. So, and again, what I talked about with Kerry Kennedy, the Kennedy family, they made their money during Prohibition in drug trafficking. Okay, it was alcohol, but, there are books galore. There are reports galore that are demonstrating that the problems produced by Prohibition, exact same as the war on drugs. The only difference And we can go back, you know, hundreds of years. In fact, there's a really good book, Sugar Blues, by, I believe it's William Duffy. I mean, this is old. This goes back a long time ago. Let me just, he talks about Gloria Swanson, but not Gloria Swanson when she's an old lady. No, Gloria Swanson that he knew when she was young, and everybody thought she was wacko because she wouldn't eat all of the you know, the cakes and everything like that. And she would bring a piece of fruit to the dinner parties and pull out her fruit and say, I'm not eating all this sugar crap. But it's called Sugar Blues. It's very good, but it goes into the historic, and this goes back to Roman times. So if you look, and starting with sugar, I mean, sugar, caffeine, all of these are drugs, but we just keep, you know, tobacco, either they're stimulants, because like with caffeine, or sugar, it's a stimulant. With well, with marijuana, it's a you know, opium, it's the same thing. And there are applications for these things that's not detrimental to society. I mean, the cocaine is made from the coca leaf. When we went to Peru, particularly we arrived at Cusco, going to Machu Picchu, and they told us, they said, if you have a bit of a headache, and we had come from Bogota, so we had been living in higher altitude, but still this was a higher altitude for us. And with the kids, I mean, I gave the kids, it's called mate tea, and it's the cocoa leaf in a tea, and it helps with, but it's not anything like a line of Coke. I mean, that stuff is processed and mixed with all sorts of chemicals and you know, concentrated. And people are like, oh, cocoa leaves, oh Lord. I'm like, and in fact, the coca leaf was used by indigenous people in high altitudes because you chew it and it helps with your energy. You try and walk up those mountains. Believe me, I need a little bit, and you need some energy. So it helps with energy, helps suppress the appetite, but it's not, you know, it's no worse than caffeine, for sure. So, you know, what really is dangerous with all of these things, I mean, poppy leaves as well, or poppy seeds. I remember people who are, you know, getting out of prison, they can't eat bagels with poppy seeds on it because it will come back positive, their tests. So, you know, all of these plant drugs, if you will, do have a place, and if you consume things in moderation, you know, like caffeine. I mean, God, in college, I mean, I lived on caffeine. Thank God, in the restaurants, you know, the coffee was cheap. It was free, although it was dishwater, as the Europeans would always tell me. So effectively, a tiny espresso in Europe, you got to drink a half, you know, pot of American coffee, if not a full pot. So, you know, we really need an end of the war on drugs, just like Prohibition ended. And this family, after Prohibition, it was going to clean itself up, become respectable. It didn't become respectable by any means. By any means. And they've been part of the problem. The Kennedy family has been part of the problem ever since they rose to power with the robber barons. I mean, it was after the robber barons. The robber barons was the generation before. Yeah. Whereas Carrie Kennedy, Caroline Kennedy, I don't know who else is in the game. But for example, I've never heard anything that would substantiate this. However, when I heard that John died in a plane accident, my first reaction was, oh, they assassinated him as well. And I'm still not convinced that that's not what happened. And as I say, nobody's brought up any kind of physical evidence. However, for me, John, he was JFK's son. I think it was called, oh gosh, what was it called? I want to say St. George. I forget. He was starting a magazine, a political magazine. And on the cover, they were doing founding fathers, but a play on that. And I think the powers that be were threatened by him. Of course, not Caroline, none of the other Kennedys. But I think as I say, that was my gut reaction. Do I have any kind of evidence? No, of course not. But that was my gut reaction. Just knowing this country and we'll get into the next one, I don't know. Everything that it's involved in and what it's capable of, and the people who are in power, what they're capable of. So that was my gut reaction. Again, as I say, that's just based on my gut reaction. That nobody else in that family would be a threat. Really. Ted Kennedy? That Ted Kennedy should be an icon in this city. And I'll get in. I'm getting into some other things, but this is about the monarchs. I was looking about I have something that I wanted to play about the monarchs, but it's just like King Juan Carlos. I was looking. I didn't realize that, but he had to leave Spain. I knew he abdicated, but I didn't realize he had to flee for corruption. And his son, they don't want to wake up and smell the coffee. The Spanish monarch, he's going to have to abdicate as well. And Leticia, ooh, she's a piece of work, a real piece of work, and not an asset for him at all. All she wants is to get her daughters to be the Queen of Spain. She's no different than Meghan Markle. I mean, this is, unfortunately, as I say, class mobility is good and fine when you have moral people. But when you have a group of immoral people who are, well, unfortunately, just going to replace the old guard immoral people, doesn't advance anything or anyone. So, oh, and then Jackie O. She, how shall I say, she brought a bit of class to the White House, but it was all very superficial. It was all very window dressing. I mean, I remember Doug Shar. He told me, he said, yeah, he knew all the Kennedys. And he said the only ones who had any kind of sense of morality were John and Caroline, because of Jackie O. And that I do believe. However, Jackie O was a pretty little doll. That woman didn't have much brains, and she certainly didn't have any balls. I mean, I don't know what would possess her. I don't care how much that guy had, but Onassis, oh my Lord. I mean, she's supposed to be this, you know, refined upper crust American society woman. I mean, I can understand that she was afraid. I can totally understand that. But, well, I won't go there. So let's go to now let's keep up with the presidents. Gerald Ford. You know, Gerald Ford, the poor guy. I mean, you know, he in running, he was, you know, he was not going to win after what happened with Nixon. And it was going to go to the Democrats. I think that was a foregone. I mean, I'd have to look at all of that stuff, but I don't think really he had much of a chance. I think I'd have to look at his presidency, what he did, but I think, you know, he was a decent guy. He stepped in. He you know, did what needed to be done after such a scandal. So, you know, I mean, I don't rate him up there as much as Jimmy Carter, but almost. I mean, I think I know, for example, I know, you know, his wife had an alcohol problem. That can either be from the pressures of the marriage, it could be from the pressures of Washington living. Again, I'd have to look more into you know, their backgrounds and their marriage and what I could find on that. But I think, you know, I think both of them were decent people, and you know, they couldn't do anything. And as a president, it was just like, okay, let's try and make it through to the end of the term and see what we can recoup, and you know, see if we can win the next elections. Which that would have been really, really, really hard to do. However, what Nixon did is child's play compared to what's going on today. So let's go to Richard Nixon. Okay, the first presidential elections that I remember was Nixon against McGovern. And I mean, I say this in my blogs, but so the, what was I, 72, think I was in third grade, I think. I kind of remember because I remember what my classroom was. So the teacher said, we are going to look at the election, you know, the candidates in the election like your parents do, on the issues, not as a popularity contest. Ever since, for every single election I have seen, American or anywhere else in the world, I'm like, that teacher didn't know what she was talking about. I think she was the first that I was like, teachers don't always know what they're talking about. That's all they do. That's all it's about. And a lot of it is the fault of the public, of the you know, the voters. You shouldn't be putting up with this shit. Well, I don't want to hear about your little stupid games. And you're bad mouthing each other. I mean, el colmo that we got was the Trump Hillary Clinton debate. I mean, Americans, fellow Americans, are you not embarrassed about your own country? Because it is embarrassing. And while I say it started with Reagan, it ramped up with Reagan, but a lot of it really actually started with Nixon. And my take on that, again, this is just gut feeling. I would have to research to get my evidence, but it's a gut feeling, a hypothesis, if you will. However, I think Watergate, because when Watergate, you know, exploded, so I forget, as I say, I was in third grade when the elections went on, so how many years after was that? I forget exactly how old I was, but it was not much later. And my mom was saying, oh, Nixon didn't do anything that anybody else isn't doing. And I have to agree with her. I mean, I don't agree with what my mother used to say very often, but when she was right, she was right. Another, and this is a real pet peeve of mine nowadays, when we would say, we didn't hear you. No, you didn't listen. People need to start learning how to listen instead of off in their la-la land, thinking up their Machiavellian games, or in to promote their little agendas and Machiavellian games. So, you know, from a child, and believe me, I mean, I would, as I say, I agreed with my mom on that point, but I didn't agree that, well, everybody does it, so it's okay. That's where I diverged with her and a lot of other people. But for example, I think personally, because if you look at Nixon, he opened up doors to China. He started the START talks. What was that? Strategic, sorry, I don't remember, but START, the START treaties. So he was like anti-war. You know, he was trying to I mean, of course, he's, you know, he didn't walk in and just change everything, and he wasn't, you know, effective as I would like him to be. But he was towards a de-escalation of conflict, if you will, in the world, and trying to do that. However, the war on drugs started during his administration. It was just really ramped up during Reagan. But I think that's also a sign of the different factions and the different powers that were working at the same time together. So, you know, he's trying to de-escalate, but of course the war on drugs, the ultimate agenda of that is weapons sales and military spending and increase in escalation of violence and, you know, military intervention and you know, I've gone on and on and on and on about that. So I was, again, this was just always a gut feeling that I had. I haven't researched this. I mean, I'd have to read through books, and I'd have to, again, a hypothesis. You can have a hypothesis without, this is what happened because I said so. Oh, Lord, how am I tired of all of that? So those are the presidents. You know, obviously my mom was a big Nixon fan. I mean, you know, she's been Republican. She was Republican. Anybody who let's just say I'm supposedly the Antichrist, according to her and my cousin. I still want to know that, like, ideology, if we want to call it that. Because I still haven't figured that one out. I would love if anybody could give me a theory on that one, how everything that I'm doing is the Antichrist. I would love your input because I'm open for suggestions. Okay, let's do Thomas Jefferson. So he's the third president. That's 1801 to 1809. Democrat, Republican. So, but at this time, one of the problems with the Democratic and the Republican Party, and if you look, I mean, really, Wikipedia is excellent because it gives you a synopsis, a summary, and if you want to look into something, you know, like an encyclopedia, but not written by somebody in an ivory tower. And you know, it'll give you references to different articles so you can follow up and you can, you know, then get into different things, but it is a good source to start from. So of course, Thomas Jefferson is the third president. Now, Thomas Jefferson is kind of like the Kennedys, you know, in that everybody, you know, hail to Thomas Jefferson. However, if you look at Thomas Jefferson, particularly let's look at him, compare it to John Dickinson, because of course that's the one that I'm promoting and saying we need to look at John Dickinson, we need to look to his argumentation, you know, my letter to Prince Charles, 2018, 2017, 2018, I can't remember, parallels the Olive Branch petition from John Dickinson to King George III. Now, Thomas Jefferson, I believe he was involved in that document, but then he and Dickinson were involved in the taking up arms. I forget the entire, taking up arms, which followed the Olive Branch petition. When the Olive Branch petition, I mean, they ignored the British Crown, just ignored them, hoping they'd go away. See how history repeats itself, generation after generation. So of course that was when there was the Declaration of Taking Up of Arms, which precipitated the American Revolution. And most people believe, because there were two drafts. There was one that was very, very forcefully written, and basically like, this is it. And one that was more diplomatic. And most people think it was Thomas Jefferson who wrote the forceful one. It was John Dickinson. Not Thomas Jefferson. Then with Thomas Jefferson, of course, we have Sally Hemings. I remember when I read that book, it was back in the 80s. Remember in the book, they were saying there were a lot of little brown children who were running around who looked a lot like Thomas Jefferson. So this, our founding fathers are not these highly respectable, they were normal men. I mean, of the time. Another thing I remember, it was a documentary I saw. It's very, very interesting about the founding fathers, but kind of behind the scenes. And they had I think it might have been in Philadelphia. I'm not sure where, but it was basically a brothel. I mean, okay, high class brothel, but they'd hang out there. They'd smoke pot, smoke marijuana, and drink, and have female company. I mean, Benjamin Franklin, he was a real big womanizer. So, people, we need to relook a little bit more at how we look at our actual parents, as well as our founding fathers and our ancestors. And this is not just the Americans. This was, as I said, I was looking at something, it's called the 5 European monarchies most likely to be abolished. Let's see, I think the Queen, the English, the British Crown was second. Is it second? And I think the Spanish Crown, I'll have to do that next time. It was like first or something. It was very good what I was looking at, but we really failed from day one to implement the Constitution and the democratic principles that the founding fathers envisioned. And again, the British Empire started under Elizabeth I. Now we can debate it, whether it's Henry, let's just put Elizabeth I. So it started under her. It became an extremely predatory and exploitative empire. And in fact, it really became so under Queen Victoria, precipitating. As I say, it had been that way, but it really became so under her. So globalization hasn't worked in the past because it's been built on predatory and exploitative empire builders. But it doesn't, I'm obviously global expats. I'm pro globalization and I'm anti the nationalistic trends that we see that are happening, which are also the motor behind the dictatorships. So, until there is a globalization that is based on peace, free trade, and capitalism, a la Adam Smith, not a la Bernard Mandeville, because I could get into that. But basically, the difference is Bernard Mandeville is like, well, it doesn't matter what jobs, prostitutes, drug lords, all produces jobs. Well, yeah, that's not working. Yeah, it produces jobs. And it gets the money flowing. It's unsustainable. It always breaks down. So, the whole America the Great, and we signed the Declaration of Independence, and therefore we are the greatest democracy on the planet, and rah, rah, rah. Not true. Oh, and then he also built Monticello. I haven't been out there. I'd like to go out there. But Versailles, it ruined him financially. And in fact, his slaves were sold off to who knows what, situation. Whereas, he didn't have to build this castle and instead take care of, his family, because, and I'm not defending slavery by any way, shape, or means. But it was, you had a feudalist society, and, also based on slavery. That this has existed since the Egyptian time. Or I don't know, but so it's an issue that's been going on for a really, really, really long time. And just saying, the African Americans, we want revenge is not helping the situation by any means. And all plantation owners, as well as in the feudal system, were not horrific tyrants. Otherwise the system would have broken down much earlier than it actually did. So that they weren't all, there was a lot of, the feudal system, it helped with land development, advances in science, in terms of, you go out to Mount Vernon, George Washington's plantation, you see a lot of the inventions that they were making to help make farming, more productive. So you had a lot of advances in that arena that happened during the feudal system, and that were a product of that process. So you have to look at the good and the bad of all of these different trends throughout history, to and instead of just saying we want justice, we because it's not even justice, it's revenge. So, but for example, if you go out to Monticello, as I said, I haven't been out there yet, but I've seen the photos. Go to John Dickinson's plantation in Delaware. He was one of the wealthiest colonialists at the time. He had a lot to lose, really a lot to lose, if they lost the war. And he was the only one who didn't sign the Declaration of Independence because he didn't want separation. But he was like, okay, well, this is the decision, this is decision. But he was the wealthiest. But you go out to his plantation, it is not ostentatious by any means. I mean, it's really humble. You go out to Mount Vernon, you go to Monticello, super ostentatious. This is very simple. So see we need a relook on a lot of things in this country, going back to the American Revolution, but even before. There's horrible atrocities that were done. I mean, I think, yeah, there were skirmishes, probably, the first colonies. It wasn't the genocide that was done in the West. I mean, my father's passed, but he would be able to sit here and tell me, it was incredible. Not only could he tell you, which it was the British forces, who fought who, the British, the French, the Spanish, some of it, but also which battles and all of that, but also which Indian tribes sided with who. So, there's a lot of, how shall I say, faulty narratives that have been going on and stuff that really need a relook. So that's Thomas Jefferson. And for pile 2, we've got, I already did Gerald. What am I doing here? Am I going crazy or what? Because I already did. So I guess I am. Maybe I went in. Okay, this is, oh no, sorry. I turned them upside down. Yeah, I am. I'm losing it. Okay, so the second card for is, I've gone into everybody else really here, because I already talked about Diane Sawyer and Abby B. Boudreaux, the Left Behind fathers case with them, international child abduction. I mean, that comes under the International Hague Convention. But NPR ombudsman Alicia Shepherd, because she's with the journalist. So I already mentioned the story about Juan Williams coming into Kalari. Need to know. I mean, come on, you guys. Find out who you're chatting up, particularly when you're married and it was going to get back to your wife. Not a good idea. Particularly when she's trying to talk to you about the founding fathers and politics in this city, and you want to change this up, and you just come out with a book on the founding fathers. You really played your cards. I almost have to feel sorry for the guy, but all you people with zipper problems, and you know, well, men and women, need to take a hike. So, because Juan Williams was at NPR, and in fact, he was ousted on, I should have looked this up, but he was ousted on some ridiculous bullshit. I forget, you know, that he was being racist, or, oh, I think it had something to do, I think it had something to do with him saying, oh yeah, something about Muslims, that if he saw somebody coming in with the turban on an airplane, he would be concerned, or something, and they found that racist and they ousted him. And I was like, isn't that protected under freedom of speech? I mean, God, we'd have to have a whole debate if that's really, really racist. I don't find it racist. He's just saying in the current environment, he feels threatened by it. You know, his immediate reaction, if you will, is, ooh, I mean, come on, quite frankly, for example, a woman walking down the street, for example, alone at night, you know, if you see, I don't want to say a colored person, but if you see, let's say somebody covered up like a hoodie, I don't care what a color, you know, his skin is, and I can't, you know, okay, it is a bit different because that is, but it's just, sometimes we do have some biases towards certain people, like me with dumb blondes. I'm sorry, you know, I see a blonde woman decked out from top to bottom and with 4 or 5 inch heels. I immediately say, dumb bimbo, whore. Now, is that necessarily true? You know, not necessarily, but that's my immediate reaction. Pam-pom, keep away from that whore. Get away from that bitch. Now, unfortunately, that stereotype in Washington is perpetuating that bias because they're all over the place. That's all you get. So part of and this gets back to the war on drugs, because the whole 9/11, I won't go into that right now, and whether that, you know, was an inside job or not. But since 9/11, there has been a heightened awareness and paranoia, if you will, towards the Muslim community. and particularly if they wear, you know, any kind of headdressing or head turban, whatever you want to call it. So that Juan Williams would express something that a large portion of Americans are experiencing, you know, I find that really inappropriate. That NPR would, you know, I don't know if he was forced to resign or fired, or I don't remember the details, but yeah, again, this is NPR. Isn't this a freedom of speech issue? That isn't this it's just advancing narratives. You know, oh, that's scandalous. You can't say anything that we interpret as offensive or discriminatory without demonstrating exactly where's the discrimination. I mean, he didn't go and like the example that I used on my trip back from Chicago to Washington when they ejected the woman and her daughter and her mother. There's an act that is discriminatory. But if you simply say, that makes, you know, yes, and I think he was admitting that this is a bias, but that he felt that bias. I you know, again, that's not discriminatory. Now, if he had gone to I forget where it was, on the airplane or whatever, and said, I want that person ejected because I don't like that. Well, of course you get into to discriminatory actions. But you have a reaction, and also you're willing to say, yeah, I had this reaction. That's not discriminatory. And in fact, why does this country have people have that reaction? You have to understand, this is an African American. Well, he's Latino and African American. Excuse me, not African American, but from well, if you called all the Americas, let's just say, you know, black and Latino descendant. I think he was from Panama, if I remember, or his family. So, you know, that it just is like, come on, you guys, and that they would fire him for that. So now I'll get to the ombudsman of NPR. This is Alicia Shepard. She is the cousin of a friend of my mother's, Joan, what's her last name? I forget. So she's a friend of my mother's, and well, the cousin of a friend of my mother's. So in 2010, I met with her about trying to get some press coverage for all of the problems that I had in Spain, the refusal of the American government, the American consulate to assist me, you know, the whole kit and caboodle. I mean, you see these cases all the time. You saw the Amanda Knox case. The only reason Amanda Knox isn't sitting in prison, rotting away, is because it got out on the press. Maria Jesus Caracosa, she's a Spanish woman who sat 8 years in a New Jersey prison under contempt of court. 8 years they held her. Each year, she submitted a habeas corpus case, thrown out by the judge. The Spanish consulate hung her out to dry. There was a book in Spain that I read before I'd even gotten to the States, so I knew about her case, and I followed it. I think this would have been maybe 2000, somewhere around 2015, that she, they eventually had to let her out. And then she couldn't leave New Jersey because she had to be exonerated. They let her out, but then she had to go back to court so they could exonerate her. But until that happened, she couldn't leave New Jersey. But her husband, he tried to poison her with rat poison. In fact, the daughter, it was during her pregnancy because the daughter had traces of it. When that, when she found out, got an annulment in Spain, where they'd been married, he jumped the gun and filed for a divorce here in the United States. So the New Jersey courts never had jurisdiction, but of course the judge took it. We see this all the time. So, the Spanish government should have been all over this. No, they were out to lunch. Hung their citizen out to dry. And she's a lawyer. So when she got out, by the time, see what happened when she got out, all of her assets, everything was under the name of the husband. So she was penniless. I think she had to apply for, I don't know what welfare, so to just get a tiny room to live in. Until, as I say, I don't know where the case is, but also the judge didn't want to exonerate her because, and I'm pretty sure it was a woman judge. She knew that Maria Jose had one wicked ass lawsuit against the New Jersey courts in Bergen County. And the husband, of course, they're divorced, married one of the police women in that, in Bergen County jail. He tried to kill the woman with rat poison, and the courts cover it all up and throw her in prison for 8 years. Oh, it's documented in my case. That's what they were trying to do. First, he tried to get me into a psychiatric ward. When that doesn't work, they try, the prison. Because if he'd gotten me into prison, there was, in fact, some manipulations with the court clerk. And I had to ram the paperwork down her throat. This is going to be really hard when this all gets to court, what went on with that. But the objective was to have me in contempt of court, and I would be thrown in jail and held probably for the rest of my life, because they probably would have killed me. Happens all the time. There was when I was still in Spain, there was a born woman. It was a post, I don't know who she was or anything. And she's like, please help me. I'm in prison in Spain. I don't know how this is 15 years ago. This was, but I was like, oh my God. Happens all the time. Everybody goes on about the women in you know, the Muslim world who are so oppressed and thrown into prison, and it's no different in the Western world. Absolutely no different. In fact, you go to the meetings with all the activists and the victims, it's kind of like, here, who has been in prison? Many will raise their hands. And it's only because they're trying to defend their children and protect their children. So, you know, Alicia Shepherd, I wrote all of this to her. Never heard back from her. I mean, she's the typical feminist, you know, telling me how she's this big jet setter because for 1 year she took off and went on a sailboat. It was like in Tokyo or something like that. Carol Joint, you know, claims the same thing, that she's like this cool jet setter because, again, she went 1 year, I think that was in the Caribbean someplace, to, you know, take a break from the rat race and become international by working on somebody's boat. I mean, sure, I think that'd be kind of cool, but that's not gonna make me some, you know, international jet setter and global citizen. So anyway, Alicia Shepherd, the ombudsmen that I have for the international courts, of course, there's the Defensor del Pueblo, which is ombudsman of Spain. Alicia Shepherd of NPR Ombudsman is the second one. Ombudsman of the IMF is the third one. And I forget, I got another ombudsman somewhere in there with all the cases that I built. But see, this is why with this report against Governor Cuomo, who put that together? Because I've been investigated. The people who put that together first need to be investigated. I want to know who they are and what their, you know, what their area of expertise is, and the legitimacy of you know, them investigating this. What right do they have to investigate him? Because the ombudsmen, all of those professionals in that, you know, oversight, I want to see them in court. So, okay. So sorry, I got a little confused earlier. Okay, so now we get to the DVEs, the domestic violent extremists, and I'll wrap this up pretty quick. I think I've already spoken, yeah, because I already read the different categories. Here, I'm just going to talk about the African Americans. In DC government agencies, basically in DC, I am so tired. And I know this is escalating elsewhere, and this is not just in DC. I am so tired of the Black women giving me attitude and refusing to serve me. I mean, this is just, you know, reverse discrimination gone wacko. And of course, it's pissing people off. I mean, you know, I've been discriminated against as an American for a variety of different reasons in my life. More as an American than as a woman. Think about it. Well, of course, as an American. Well, with the Americans, I'm discriminated against because I'm not popular and liked. So it's another form of discrimination. I'm not a party girl. Even though I like to, I mean, I like to socialize. I love to organize parties. It is just that that's not the objective of my life. It's a means to an end. But it really is escalating things. But you know, so as I say, I've been discriminated against. Well, now they're trying to get me living in a tent in a street. That gets into serious shit, you know, like that I'm concerned about. But, you know, how shall I say that? I have little to complain about. I mean, up until you know, 15 years ago, but you know, the stupid bullshit that they pull on me, like well, from before, it didn't change my life. You know, I was a trophy wife. If these girls oust me from, this is a good example, with Bogota Kai, if they get rid of me, sure, it pisses me off. Sure, you know, they're damaging my reputation, but anybody who knows me will be like, that's bullshit. You know, and anybody who wants to spread, you know, rumors and stupidity, let them go ahead. I mean, you know, you spend your life, believe me, I spent my life, you know, trying to debunk all of the bullshit that anybody says about me. I never get anywhere. But anybody who knows who I am and what I'm doing and has any kind of a brain is going to know that's bullshit. So I don't worry about it. But, you know, before the courts and before I became marginalized and canceled by everybody, there's slights. It doesn't affect my survival. And also, I'm in a position where I can, you know, humiliate the person. Say, you should be ashamed of yourself. I mean, okay, there's various ways to do that. You know, not only for, you know, as I say, like with Bogota Kai, I just stayed in as the president and showed them that they were not going to destroy the organization, which had been the objective. So, you know, this whole thing about discrimination, yes, you have to denounce it. However, as I say, I've been discriminated against all the time. Oh, Lord. What I heard, you Americans, I have to, you know, come out and defend, but, you know, presenting the truth about the Americans and debunking the biases while admitting that I mean, you know, Americans, we're perfect. I'm like, get over it. You're doing damage to our reputation by that. Well, wait a minute. I mean, I was first. I got no problem. My government and my country. This, and we gotta fix it. As much as with the French, the Spanish. Everywhere I go, I'm like, oh well, yeah, this is in paradise. No places. So I mean, again, it is the vicious, viperous women who are just needling. Um, the powder keg, and it will explode. I mean, and I'm not the only one. I mean, people have told me. I don't go out much. I don't do anything. I just talk to the cashier. Or the Safeway people, they know me. I drink a lot of seltzer water. So I buy these huge liters there. And I was joking with them. I said, oh, you're gonna know, you guys know me as the seltzer water lady. Because I go in with a cart and I get like 5 or 6 of them, and I just pull one out and they say, how many is it today in there? So anyway, you know, this is my big social outing, the employees in Safeway who know me. But I told them, I said, well, better well, club soda lady than the wino who comes in all the time. So anyway, but see, like the Safeway, the guys, mostly, and this is Safeway, the Metro, the post office, the guys, they're cool, really nice, serviceable, you know, no problems. And it's not all of the Black women. And everybody knows in those organizations, they know who it is. But of course, they don't say anything because then they'll get fired. But these corporations and government agencies, I mean, at the local level, oh, and don't even get me started on the DC landlord, well, the DC courts. When I went through the DC courts in 2016, I was going through, you know, the security, and I'm coming through and I'm like, put down my bag and taking off my coat because it's cold. And so I got all of this stuff to put onto the you know, through the x-ray thing. And I said to the guy, because I forget where, you know, I forget where I was coming from, but you know, another fight. And I just said to the guy, I said, I am so sick and tired of everybody in this town playing games. And he was a very elderly Black man. And he said, oh, lady, don't come around here because that's all they do. And I said, I am already here and I'm hauling every single goddamn ass in this place to the international courts. And he said, good for you. See, there are a few people, but it is a very few, minority of people in this town who are tired of the crap, who want to see it cleaned up. But the protection rackets that have consolidated their little bases for decades and decades, they're going to hold on to their power. You know, come hell or high water, they do not care if the planet self-destructs. And this is who is in control in Washington. I mean, I have names, you know, if that wasn't the case, why have all of the people that I have solicited to take action sitting around on their asses? I mean, as I say, let's go to the courts and they can demonstrate how they are of good faith or doing their job, or, you know, whatever is my grievance against them or anybody else. I mean, because I'm just one person. I mean, there are lots and lots and lots of people who have been damaged by what's going on here. You know, as an employee or you know, Americans, as well as people around the world. Because this is, I mean, the English will contest me on this. The Parisians, well, the French will contest me on that. Might not get an argument from the Spaniards, but maybe will. Washington and New York City are at the lead of the free world democracy. Well, if they don't start, you know, stepping up to the plate, they better stop contending that and at least admit what they and who they are. So, you know, we once again get into same old story. Oh, let's see, I didn't pull my cards, but let's see, I got one. Oh, I got Nancy Pelosi, Queen Bee, Trump's an Alpha-Dominance Feminist. Alpha-Dominance Feminist Nazi. And I got an ace, the White House, located at 1600 Pennsylvania. When was it? 2000. I think it was after the 2000. Yeah, during the Trump administration. They were building a wall in front of the White House. You know, well, it's kind of cut through pen, but you know, the on the Lafayette Square Park side. So they're building a wall there. And I go by and I'm looking and I'm like, excuse me, what's going on? I mean, so I'm reading the thing. I'm shaking my head. And there's a whole bunch of cops there on their bicycles. And I'm like, this is not good. It's not good. And in this arrogant guy, he goes, oh, just wait until it's finished. Then you'll see it's really good. And I said, no, it's not going to be good. And it's not good. I said, when I came here in 1981, there was no security whatsoever. In fact, you could probably maybe even get White House tickets. I mean, now it's all beefed up. Capitol Hill, no security whatsoever. And he said, oh, yeah, but the world has changed. And I said, yeah, changed for the worse. And my former classmates and compatriots may not have been watching you guys, but I have. I've been watching you. And there was one police officer woman in there who I think agreed with me, but that little SOB was like, well, you'll see, lady. the police, there are maybe some good ones in there, but both the police, they're just a bunch of bullies and just want more, you know, more strong arm tactics and more guns and more power and, you know, beat up the people with a free rein and kill them and everything. I mean, I got local police, DC police, Capitol Hill police, security people throughout the city. They don't give a shit. The only thing that they care about, ka-ching, 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 and cashing in. And if they get that, they won't say a word. They have labor forces. They could start saying enough is enough. We're putting our lives on the line. The money's too good. There's too many jobs. I mean, you know, Capitol Hill, instead of addressing the problem, let's just hire some more police officers, get some more guns, and put up some more barriers, build another wall. Why not? That's what we do here. Okay, so for pile one, which was Thomas Jefferson and JFK, I speak English, doesn't I? Or are you deaf? I don't know. All of the presidents? I speak English, doesn't I? Or are you deaf? Oh, we get that one a lot. Oh, here's a new one. One side will make you grow. Oh, I think I did see this once. One side will make you grow taller. The other side will make you grow shorter. That is for Gerald Ford and NPR Budsman. Okay, so maybe let's give Gerald Ford the grow taller and NPR Budsman grow shorter. Okay, then this I don't think I've seen. We can talk when there's anybody worth talking to. Maybe that's why I'm ending up on the Zoom, talking to myself. But believe me, I mean, I have knocked the doors. I have busted my chops trying to find somebody in this town who's worth talking to and who has a brain. And nowhere to be found. Nowhere to be found. Lost cause. For me, oh, oysters, said the carpenter. You've had a pleasant run. Not since I've been back to DC. I don't know what the pleasant run is. Maybe it's just building the cases, but it hadn't been too pleasant, I can assure you. So anyway, okay, well, have a nice evening. Happy Labor Day, and see y'all tomorrow.